Hey, tonight's episode isn't about kings or battles or shiny armor. It's about waking up, not from a dream, from a nightmare called the Middle Ages. And don't let the fairy tales fool you. There are no magical swords, no noble quests, and definitely no hot baths with rose petals. Just rats, rashes, and regret. So before we begin, take a moment to appreciate where you are right now. A clean room, a soft bed, a climate-controlled reality free of manure. If you enjoy these stories, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where and when you're watching. Especially if you're about to fall asleep, because the people in this story definitely aren't. They're waking up in the year 1325, and so are you. Let's see how long you last. Now close your eyes and open them again. You just regained consciousness in a wooden box that passes for a home. You are alive. Unfortunately, the first sensation isn't pain. That comes later. It's smell. You open your crusted eyes into the stinking fog of your own existence. A stew of body odor, damp straw, boiled cabbage, livestock musk, and something acidic that might once have been ale. It lingers in your nose like a warning. The scent of survival at its most degraded. You're lying on a mattress. Technically, it's a flattened sack of straw that has collapsed under years of weight, soaked in sweat, and colonized by every variety of biting parasite nature has to offer. The stuffing inside smells like mildew, old cheese, and barn rot because it is barn rot. This straw came from a cow stall and has not improved with time. Your blanket is a single slab of wool, heavy as sin and roughly the texture of an old scouring pad. It has not been washed in a year, maybe two. It's stiff with grime and smells like it once witnessed a crime. Still, it's the only thing standing between you and the pre-dawn chill seeping through every crack in your timber walls. You grip it tighter, as though filth could protect you. You try to stretch, but your body has other ideas. Your spine snaps and pops like a sack of kindling. Your shoulders ache from sleeping in the same position every night, curled up, knees to chest like an injured dog on a dirt floor. Your legs cramp. Your neck is locked sideways. You are 22 years old, ancient by medieval standards, and already you feel the weight of a life that will never be long enough to feel normal. As you shift, your bare foot touches the floor. It's wet. Why? It could be condensation, a leak in the roof, or the goat peeing again. It doesn't matter. You're used to stepping into the unknown. The floor is made of compacted dirt, scattered with straw, chicken feathers, and what might be part of yesterday's dinner. There are no rugs, no slippers, and no barrier between your feet and the ecosystem thriving beneath them. Welcome to rural Europe, where your toes are part of the food chain. You sit up slowly, not because you're groggy, but because you know fast movement is a gamble. There's a sharp pain in your hip, and your left arm is asleep from lying on it all night. Not that you were sleeping well. You were drifting in and out of unconsciousness, scratching constantly, and waking up every half hour because someone was coughing, groaning, or rolling over onto your face. Or because a rat ran across your chest. Or because of the lice. Ah yes, the lice. Your ever-present companions. You scratch your scalp with a fingernail, but it's not enough. You reach for the wooden spoon beside your bed. Not for eating, but for scraping. You rake it through your hair like a comb forged by misery. The lice scatter. The eggs remain. You'll be scratching until death. Lice aren't just a nuisance. They're your roommates. Your blanket has them. Your shirt has them. You are, in every way, infested. Around you, the rest of the household begins to stir. Not because they're rested. No one here has ever been rested. But because it's impossible to ignore the collective groaning of human suffering. Your younger brother sits up and immediately starts coughing up something chunky. Your grandmother is muttering in her sleep, and someone farted loud enough to shake dust from the ceiling beams. A chicken flutters past your shoulder, flapping against your ear in blind panic. It probably stepped on a mouse. There are no bedrooms, no curtains, no walls, just one room, one family, and one massive pile of noise, heat, and breath. You share this space with your parents, siblings, a couple of distant cousins, and possibly a stranger no one wants to ask about. The animals live here too. Goats, hens, and the cat, which may or may not be feral. You haven't seen a private moment since birth. The concept of alone time is fiction. You dress, sleep, eat, cry, defecate, give birth, and die all in the same 8 square meters of timber and dirt. The walls of your home are uneven planks chinked with dried mud and dung. They sag inward like they're just about done pretending to be walls. The roof is thatch, but it leaks like a philosophical metaphor. You can see the sky through it, which is poetic until the rain starts and your blanket absorbs it like a moldy sponge. You tried fixing it with more straw, but straw costs money, and money is a mythical creature that visits other people. There are no windows, just holes where air squeezes in uninvited. If you want light, you open the door, and with it, invite a wind that smells like manure, fish, and hopelessness. The bell tolls. Somewhere in the village, probably near the church, a massive iron bell rings, shattering what little peace remained. It's the medieval alarm clock. Cold, metallic, and louder than judgment. It tells you the day has begun. God demands obedience. Your Lord demands labor. Your bladder demands immediate attention. And your feet? They demand mercy. None will be granted. You stand up, slowly, carefully. The floor creaks beneath you. The entire room smells like people. Not the way a warm kitchen smells like home, but the way an overcrowded dungeon smells like regret. You take a breath through your mouth. It doesn't help. The air is damp and stale. You cough. Everyone else coughs too. That's how mornings work here. A symphony of phlegm and prayer. You look down at your body. You're wearing a long linen tunic that used to be white before it became beige, then gray, then sort of brown around the armpits. You sleep in it. You work in it. You may die in it. It smells like the inside of sheep's mouth. You haven't washed it in months because soap is rare and water is heavy. You stink. Everyone stinks. You don't even notice anymore. But the lice do. They love it. You sigh. Not because you're tired, though you are, but because you remember what happens next. You'll have to go outside to relieve yourself. And what's waiting there isn't a bathroom. It's a bucket. But that's a story for the next chapter. Let's get this over with. Your stomach gurgles, not from hunger, but from danger. Something inside you is angry. Maybe it was the barley stew from yesterday that smelled like wet rope. Maybe it's just the normal churning of a medieval digestive system desperately trying to process bread mixed with sawdust and mold. Either way, it's time. Your bowels make the decision for you. You have to go. Immediately. There is no toilet. That's a word from the distant future. There is no seat. No button to flush. No plumbing. Not even a hole in the ground that someone bothered to line with rocks. You stumble outside into the misty cold, stepping carefully through a yard that is equal parts mud, animal droppings, and dead grass. You hold your breath as you circle the back of the house to your family's designated relief zone. A wooden bucket, already full, swarming with flies, and daring you to test its limits. The bucket has been here for years. It was once used to carry apples, or maybe water. Then one day, someone had an accident near it, and now it lives here, reeking of sorrow and ammonia. Your uncle Wilfred, may the saints forgive him, had a particularly bad night last week, and the memory still clings to the wood. There's no privacy, no cover, no dignity. The chickens are watching. The cat is watching. God is watching. You squat anyway. You're surrounded by nature, but nature offers no help. Leaves are stiff and sharp. Moss is wet and uncooperative. If you're lucky, someone left a rag nearby, stiff as bark and already used. You do your best. You don't feel clean. You don't remember feeling clean. Your eyes careful not to tip the bucket, and now comes the fun part: disposal. Because you can't just leave it. That's unsanitary. No, no. The medieval solution is far more elegant. You carry the bucket to the front of the house, step up to the one small opening in the wall, and hurl its contents into the street. Tradition requires you to shout something first. Garde à l'eau, an old French phrase that roughly means run for your life. It's supposed to be a warning. It never works. The street outside your home is not a street in the modern sense. It is not paved. It is not clean. It is not remotely dry. It is a shallow trench of human filth, rotting vegetables, stray dogs, and the occasional confused goose. It smells like fermented despair. People walk here. Children play here. Merchants sell cheese 3 feet from it. No one pretends it's okay. Everyone just accepts it because there is no alternative. In the larger towns, there are public latrines, communal benches with holes carved in them, all perched above a wide, festering pit. You go there only if you absolutely have to. The smell is legendary. The privacy is non-existent. You sit shoulder to shoulder with other villagers, trousers around your ankles. Try not to make eye contact while you each pretend this isn't the most degrading moment of your week. Sometimes, people try to have conversations. Sometimes, someone brings food. Sometimes, you just sit in silence, blinking away tears from the fumes. Ventilation? None. Sanitation? Negative. The flies are bold, the rats are fast, and the chances of catching something unpleasant are guaranteed. You've heard stories of people falling in. You don't know if they're true, but they feel true. And what about wiping? Ah yes, a detail modern people take for granted. You don't have toilet paper. It hasn't been invented yet. Or if it has, no one told your village. Instead, you choose from a variety of options, all equally terrible: a handful of straw, a scrap of old cloth, a rough leaf that might be poisonous. If you're feeling fancy, or you've stolen from your lord's laundry, maybe a piece of worn wool. Most days, it's your hand. You wash later, or you don't. Even among the nobility, things are not exactly luxurious. Castles might have guardrabes, tiny stone closets that open out into the moat. Yes, the same moat you're told protects the castle from invaders. It also collects waste. Liquid, solid, human, animal. It all slides down the shaft and into the murky waters below, which is why no one drinks from the moat. Unless it's an emergency, which it always is. Unless you think the guardrabe is safe. Think again. Because sometimes, when enemy forces storm a castle, they don't go through the front gates. No, they go through the back end. Literally. There are recorded cases of soldiers sneaking into castles via the waste shafts. Imagine standing guard in the hallway while a man with a sword and a bad attitude climbs up through yesterday's stew and charges at you from the latrine. That's history. So whether you're a starving peasant with a crusty rag and a tilted bucket, or a wealthy baron with a private hole in the wall that leads to a pit of disease and frogs, the result is the same: humiliation, discomfort, and a constant risk of falling in or being attacked from below. Toileting is not a moment of relief. It is a confrontation with your own mortality. You return inside, vaguely traumatized, wiping your hands on something that might be your sleeve. You smell worse than when you woke up. Your knees ache from squatting. Your soul aches from the shame. But there's no time to rest. You haven't eaten. You haven't dressed. You haven't even scratched half the lice yet. And worst of all, you know you'll have to go again. Maybe not today. Maybe tomorrow. But the bucket waits. It always waits. One wrong move, and you'll find yourself face down in your neighbor's breakfast. One slippery step on the street, and you'll be baptized in humanity's leftovers. There are no porcelain thrones here. Just shame, straw, and a trail of flies. And you still haven't brushed your teeth. But we'll get to that horror soon enough. Congratulations. You survived the morning's first ordeal with your dignity mostly shredded and your body vaguely intact. Now you're hungry. Not in the poetic, romantic sense of hunger. Not like, oh, I could go for a croissant, but in the raw, primal, pitting your gut way that makes your hands tremble and your mind go a little soft. And yet, you already know that what comes next will not satisfy you. Because it's time for breakfast. And breakfast in the Middle Ages is not a reward. It's not a joy. It's not even warm. It is simply the act of putting something into your mouth so that you don't collapse while tilling the Lord's field or dragging a cart full of mud across the village. You do not eat to feel full. You eat so you don't faint and die in public. You shuffle to the fire pit in the center of the single room you call home. It has gone out in the night. Of course it has. No one stoked it. Wood is precious. You ration it like gold. The ashes are cold and gray, like the eyes of someone who's given up hope but still shows up to work. You blow on the coals. Nothing. You poke them with a stick. Still nothing. Finally, you dig a live ember from the corner and feed it with twigs, straw, and silent prayers. After a full 5 minutes of coaxing, a small flame flickers to life. It's the most hopeful thing you'll see all day. Now it's time to prepare food. That is, if you have any. Let's take a moment to review your pantry. It is not a shelf. It is not a fridge. It is not even a cupboard. It is a single cloth bag hanging from a ceiling beam to keep it away from rats. Inside, a handful of oats, some crumbs of stale barley bread, and one onion that has been passed around the family like an heirloom for the last 3 days. You do not have meat. Meat is for festivals and funerals. You might have some dried fish if you live near a river and the bishop didn't claim it first. But mostly you have gruel. Gruel, that magical, sludgy, vaguely beige substance that exists in every time period as shorthand for we're suffering. It is the food of peasants, prisoners, and people in Dickens' novels. Your gruel is made from oats or barley boiled in water. Water which is probably not clean, but you've built up an immunity over the years. If you're lucky, the gruel is thick enough to cling to your spoon. If you're really lucky, you have a spoon. If not, you slurp it from a broken bowl or from your cupped hands like a desperate animal at a roadside puddle. You eat slowly because there's not much of it, and your stomach has learned not to expect anything better. Each bite is lukewarm and vaguely sour. There's a crunch in it, probably a piece of grit or charred ash from the bottom of the pot. You try not to think about what it might be. You chew. You swallow. You don't enjoy. Enjoyment is a modern idea. You eat to endure. The bread, if you're fortunate enough to have any, is a round hunk of something between brick and sponge. It is hard. It is dry. It was baked 4 days ago and has lived on the table since then, soaking up smoke and disappointment. The flour used to make it was likely mixed with powdered bark, beans, or ground up acorns to stretch it further. Sometimes even with dried clay. It fills your belly, but takes something from your soul. You gnaw at the crust like a dog on a bone. It cracks slightly. Your teeth ache. You have no dental care, and you're reminded of that fact with every chew. You take a sip of small beer, a low-alcohol drink made from grain mash and boiled water. Why beer? Because the water will kill you. The beer might not. It's weak, warm, and slightly sour, but it's the closest thing you'll have to hydration today. Your children drink it. Your grandmother drinks it. Your pregnant wife drinks it. It is considered safer than milk, which spoils fast, and safer than well water, which is basically a cholera cocktail waiting to happen. There is no coffee. No tea. No citrus. You have never tasted sugar. That's a spice for kings. You've heard rumors of a crystal powder that rich people sprinkle on their food like fairy dust. But you've never seen it. Your sweet tooth is a distant, ancestral memory, now replaced by cracked molars and bleeding gums. You rub at your jaw as you eat. Something feels loose. You pray it isn't. Sometimes, if fortune smiles, your meal includes a piece of cheese, but not the kind you'd find in a sandwich or on a fancy board next to grapes. This cheese is hard, very hard, almost sharp enough to be used as a tool. It smells like an old barn and tastes like hay wrapped in damp cloth. Still, it contains fat, and fat is life. You nibble it like a starving mouse. You don't waste a crumb. If it's winter, everything is worse. The oats are stale. The beer is flat. The bread is rock solid. There are no greens, no fruits, and no hope. You might have dried peas or beans, which require boiling for hours. And again, that costs wood. So you eat them half-cooked, then spend the rest of the day farting like a war trumpet and praying you don't split your trousers. Fiber is abundant. Dignity is not. Around you, the rest of the family eats in silence. There is no talking in the morning. Talking implies energy. Energy implies hope. No one here has either. Your sister picks mold off her crust and shrugs. Your brother stirs his gruel with a blank expression. The baby gums a strip of boiled onion. Someone sneezes. Someone burps. Someone scratches their armpit, then licks their finger. You don't make eye contact. You look out the door. The village is waking up. People are already moving through the mud, carrying buckets, driving carts, chasing pigs, shouting at dogs. Life is happening. You are expected to participate, but your stomach is still half empty. Your mouth tastes like fermented wood, and your mind is stuck on the knowledge that this sad, gray, tasteless slop is the best meal you'll get today. You scrape the last bit of gruel from the pot with your finger and suck it clean. You lick the spoon. You wipe your mouth with your sleeve. You cough. Your stomach rumbles again, still unsatisfied. But there's no more. You rise from the table, if it can be called that, and prepare to face the next misery on the schedule. Getting dressed, which is to say, putting on the same crusty, flea-infested rags you wore yesterday, and the day before that, and the month before that. But we'll get to that in the next chapter. You've eaten your sad excuse for breakfast. Your stomach is still whispering threats. Your fingers are sticky with yesterday's beer, and your breath could peel bark off a tree. But the day does not wait. The field does not plow itself. The pigs do not herd themselves. And if you're caught loafing in your underlayer, such as it is, someone might mistake you for dying, which is far too exciting for this hour. It's time to get dressed. You reach for your clothes. Not a closet, not a drawer, not even a peg on the wall. Just a folded pile of cloth stuffed into a sack near the hearth. A communal heap of rags shared, stolen, handed down, patched, and lived in so thoroughly that they feel more like skin than fabric. Your tunic, for example, belonged to your father, who inherited it from his cousin, who got it from a man who drowned in a ditch. You've worn it every day for as long as you can remember. There is no winter version. There is no summer version. There is the tunic. It is made of wool, not the soft, buttery kind that modern people associate with cozy scarves and baby blankets, but coarse, stiff, lumpy stuff that feels like sleeping in a sack of pine needles. It has been exposed to smoke, sweat, weather, childbirth, livestock, and open flame. It has never been truly clean. It probably never will be. The color? Originally something pleasant, maybe beige or undyed gray. But now it's a kind of greasy brown mottled with suspicious darker stains that no longer wash out, even if you had soap. Which you don't. You pull it over your head and feel it scratch against your already irritated skin. It clings in the wrong places and leaves the rest exposed. The hem is uneven because it caught fire once. The sleeves are too tight at the shoulders and baggy at the wrists. There's a hole under one arm that's been growing for months. You've sewn it shut 3 times. The lice don't care. They crawl back in, colonizing the seams like tiny, relentless conquerors. Next come your underthings, or what passes for them. Linen braids, if you're lucky. A long shirt if you're not. Either way, It's one single layer of fabric that serves as underwear, nightwear, and workwear. You do not change it. You simply rotate it from cleanest to least offensive. Your body itches from the moment you put it on. It clings to your thighs with a damp familiarity that suggests it never really left your skin. And it hasn't. It sleeps with you. It works with you. It suffers with you. It smells like you, multiplied by time, weather, and regret. If you're going out, which you are, you might add a second tunic or a rough cloak. But layering is dangerous. It makes you sweat, and sweat leads to rashes, and rashes turn into infections, and infections get lanced with dirty knives by drunk barber surgeons. So you hesitate. You weigh the weather. If it's cloudy, you risk it. If it's raining, you go light and just accept you'll be soaked through by midday. Fabric is heavy. Wet fabric is heavier. And drying clothes requires a fire, which requires wood, which costs more than you make in a week. Now for the feet. This is the hardest part, because your shoes, assuming you have any, are the stuff of medieval legend. They're made of leather once a long time ago, but have since shrunk, cracked, and deformed into a shape that barely resembles footwear. They are held together with twine, grease, and prayer. The sole is half detached. There's a hole near the toe where you once stepped on a nail. The nail is still there. You walk around it. You've trained your foot to curl slightly, just enough to avoid bleeding every time you take a step. If you don't have shoes, and let's be honest, most peasants don't, then your feet are your shoes. Calloused, yellowed, split, and crusted with the history of every road, field, and dung heap you've ever walked through. The skin is so thick it doesn't register pebbles anymore. Only fire and frostbite can pierce it. You tie strips of cloth around your heels and hope no one steps on you. There is no soap. You wash your hands in a bowl of yesterday's dishwater, shared with your siblings, cloudy with grease, crumbs, and the occasional floating insect. You splash it on your face and feel the sting of cold. You scrub behind your ears with your sleeve. You do not brush your teeth. That's not a thing here. At best, you rub them with a rag or chew on a mint stalk if you can find one. Mostly, you just ignore them and hope they stay in your head a few more winters. There is no mirror, but you don't need one. You can smell yourself. You can feel the grease in your hair and the damp in your armpits. You are dressed. You are ready. You look like everyone else. Slightly hunched, slightly dirty, and entirely indistinguishable from the other villagers stumbling out of their hovels, blinking into the muddy light, tugging at their sleeves, scratching behind their necks, and praying the day passes without catastrophe. Fashion doesn't exist. What you wear is determined entirely by what you have, which is dictated by what your father had, which was dictated by what his father didn't lose in a fire. Everyone looks the same, shades of brown, gray, and faded black. Bright colors are for the rich. Dyes cost money. Tailors cost money. Embroidery is a rumor. Buttons are sorcery. If your garment has a fastener at all, it's a piece of knotted cord, a bone pin, or your own belt looped through a hole that didn't exist last year. You step outside. Your cloak flaps in the wind like a dying bird. Your hood won't stay up. Your braids are falling. You smell like boiled onions and stale leather. A dog sniffs you, then walks away. A child points at the stain on your hem. You pull your belt tighter, adjust the rag around your neck, and try to look like someone who hasn't already given up. You won't win any beauty contests. But here, no one will notice. Everyone looks like you, tired, scratched, crooked, and slightly on fire. And anyway, it's not about what you're wearing. It's about what you'll be doing in it. You are now dressed, which is a strong word for having wrapped your filthy body in an even filthier tunic. And you have eaten if eating can be used to describe swallowing 3 spoonfuls of oat slime and gnawing on what may have once been bread. Your joints creak. Your head itches. Your stomach mutters vague threats. But none of it matters, because the Lord's land isn't going to plow itself. and your rent, which is paid not in money, but in suffering, is overdue. Time to work. There is no commute, no coffee, no co-worker to complain to. Your entire workplace begins exactly 4 steps outside your front door. You don't clock in. You simply pick up a tool and begin the slow process of being ground into the earth by generations of unpaid, unthanked, and unrelenting labor. The job is simple: survive until nightfall. The means: everything from bone-breaking manual toil to quiet acts of desperation in the mud. You start in the fields. Always the fields. They are your religion, your prison, and your graveyard all at once. Your Lord owns them, and by extension, He owns you. You are a villain, a word that sounds suspiciously like villain, but means something even worse: a person halfway between human and soil. You don't own the land. You are the land. You belong to it, and to the noble who taxes your every breath. The plow is already in the ground, waiting. It is not the iron-tipped marvel of later centuries, but a wooden monstrosity that groans with every tug and shakes your arms to the bone. If you're lucky, there's a half-starved ox to pull it. If you're not, you're the ox. You push and drag the contraption through the cold, clotted earth, pausing only to clear stones and pull out roots with your bleeding hands. The mud sucks at your feet like a greedy beast. Every step is a gamble. Sink to the ankle, twist your knee, or find a hidden shard of rusted iron from some forgotten battle. The soil remembers. The soil bites. By mid-morning, your back is a rope of fire, your palms are blistered, and your eyes sting from the wind and smoke. You pause only long enough to wipe your nose on your sleeve, which is also your napkin, towel, and handkerchief. You do not complain. No one listens. Complaining is for children and priests. You work or you starve. That is the entire economic model of the Middle Ages. Bend your spine, bleed into the dirt, and pray for rain. And rain will come, but not when you need it. It comes when your grain is just about to ripen, or when you've left your tools in the field. It floods your work, drowns your seeds, and leaves you cursing the sky while digging ditches barefoot in a slurry of manure and worm corpses. And if it doesn't rain, you get drought, crop failure, and famine. A slow communal death that begins with dry soil and ends with you chewing on bark. If you're not a farmer, and only a small fraction of peasants escape that fate, your job isn't much better. You might be a tanner, scraping flesh from hides in vats of urine, or a butcher, working barehanded in a fly-swarm shed where blood puddles around your ankles and meat spoils before it hits the table. You could be a full-time pig herder, ankle-deep in filth, chased by animals that are smarter and angrier than you. Or a thatcher, dangling from rooftops with no ropes, no harnesses, and no dignity, hoping your knees don't snap before payday. Some jobs are worse than others. The dye maker, for instance, spends his days boiling animal parts and rotting plants in iron pots filled with piss. The result? A sickly shade of blue and a face full of permanent chemical burns. The miller works in choking flour dust that coats the lungs and explodes with the smallest spark. The baker wakes before dawn and stirs ash into the bread so the flour lasts longer. You don't pick your job. Your job picks you, passed down like a curse from father to son, mother to daughter, until someone dies too young and it goes to the next warm body in line. And let's not forget the women, who work twice as hard for half the credit and a double helping of danger. They rise before everyone else, milk the goat, tend the fire, cook the pottage, grind the barley, feed the children, clean the lice-ridden bedding, mend the ragged clothes, and then head out to the fields with you to haul water, gather wood, and replant what the storm destroyed. Then, after all that, they're expected to give birth with no assistance, no pain relief, and no guarantee of surviving the night. Their job? Everything. By midday, assuming such a thing exists when you don't own a clock, You've already shed more sweat than blood in your body. Your shoulders feel like someone beat you with a fence post. Your hands are cracked open, caked with dirt and whatever passed for breakfast. You haven't sat down. You haven't eaten. You haven't spoken a full sentence. You're a machine powered by punishment and instinct. You wonder, briefly, what happens if you just stop? Sit down. Refuse. Refuse to lift another sack of barley. Refuse to pull another card. Refuse to help fix the neighbor's collapsing pig pen. What if you simply laid on the ground, close your eyes, and let the day wash over you? You'd be whipped, or fined, or worse, your family would be punished for your laziness. Because in the medieval world, sloth is a sin, and sin is contagious. So you press on, because your children need food, because your landlord needs taxes, because the priest needs offerings, because everyone in this village is tangled in a system of pain that only continues if you continue. You're not a person. You are a gear in the great screaming machine of feudal life. By evening, when the sun hangs low and red like an open sore on the horizon, you drag yourself back toward your home. You do not walk. You limp, you sway, you shuffle. Your knees are swollen. Your eyes are rimmed with smoke. Your fingers no longer respond to commands. You smell like soil, sweat, smoke, and fatigue. You pass your neighbor, who looks just as broken. You nod. He nods. No words. You're both too tired to pretend this isn't hell. You made it through another day. Barely. And tomorrow, you'll do it again. Until your body breaks. Or your crops fail. Or war arrives. Or the plague. Or a horse kicks you in the head. But you'll worry about that later. Right now, you have to prepare for dinner. And no, that doesn't mean you get to sit down. You're home. At least your body is. Your mind is still somewhere in the barley field, caught between a pulled muscle and the image of your neighbor getting dragged by a goat. The day has stripped you raw. You stink. You itch. Your knees ache like old door hinges. Every part of you throbs with effort. But no one cares. There are still chores to do. Water to carry. Fire to stoke. Children to scold. And above all, food to prepare. Because the sun may be setting, but the suffering is not. You trudge inside, where the air is thick and sour, a blend of sweat, sour milk, old ash, and damp wool. Someone has already lit the hearth, and a pot hangs over the flames, bubbling faintly. You recognize the smell. It's the same thing you ate yesterday, and the day before, and every day since you were old enough to chew. It's pottage. Always pottage. Forever pottage. Pottage is not a meal. It is a strategy, a method of turning nearly rotten vegetables, dried pulses, and scraps of mystery into something thick enough to weigh down your stomach and quiet the howling emptiness inside. You make it in bulk. You eat it for every meal. You add to it endlessly, like a cursed stew that never runs out, only mutates. One day it's mostly cabbage and turnip. The next, it's mostly onion and despair. If you're lucky, there's a bone in it. Not meat, just the bone. For flavor. Maybe. You ladle it out with a cracked wooden spoon into a shared bowl. There are no individual plates. No cutlery sets. You sit on the ground. You eat with your fingers. Your children dig in beside you. They're quieter now, tired from hauling firewood and herding poultry. Your wife hands you a piece of hard bread, and you nod in thanks. Words take too much energy. You chew the bread carefully. It's not fresh. It never is. It's been sitting in the smoke of the hearth for 3 days, growing drier and harder by the hour. You dunk it in the pottage to soften it, assuming the pottage hasn't thickened into paste. Sometimes the bread crumbles. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes your teeth do. You've lost 2 molars in the last year, and one of the remaining ones is beginning to ache in a way that suggests doom. There's a sliver of carrot in your bowl. It's a big deal. Your youngest points it out and tries to claim it. You pretend not to hear. You eat it quickly, chewing like it's the last real thing you'll ever taste. It probably is. There's no meat. The last chicken was saved for Easter, and the pig was sold for rent. You haven't seen butter since your cousin's wedding 5 years ago. Your vegetables are wrinkled. Your barley is moldy. Your onions are soft. But you eat them anyway. They're all you have. You drink a bit of small beer to wash it down. Same weak brew as the morning, but now it's warmer and more sour. The aftertaste is metallic, and it leaves your tongue dry. Your lips are chapped. Your mouth tastes like wood and copper. You wipe your chin with your sleeve and keep chewing. Outside, the night deepens. The cold creeps back through the gaps in the walls. A draft tickles your spine and makes your eyes water. You huddle near the fire, not for comfort, but for survival. The hearth is the heart of the home, not because it's cozy, but because without it, you die. You add more straw, more sticks, one log if you're feeling reckless. You can't afford to use too much wood. Winter is long, and your pile is short. Dinner conversation, if it happens at all, is brief. You talk about who fell in the mud, who got bit by the dog, whose turn it is to dump the waste bucket. There is no laughter, no stories, no singing. You're not in the mood. Your face hurts. Your feet are numb. Your children are asleep on their elbows before the pot even cools. You stare at the coals. Think about tomorrow. Same work, same food, same aches. You think about getting sick, not in a romantic, tragic way, but in a terrifying, slow, rotting way. You heard the old woman in the next hovel has a fever. You hope it's not the pox, or the flux, or whatever mysterious affliction is currently rolling through the village disguised as a punishment from God. You scrape the bottom of the pot for the last bit of pottage. It's blackened, thick, and bitter. You eat it anyway. Waste is a sin. You choose slower now, not from satisfaction, but from exhaustion. Every bite is a chore. Every swallow, a negotiation. You burp softly. You feel full but not nourished. It's a strange feeling to eat without energy, to chew without pleasure, to finish a meal and still feel empty. This is not dinner. This is survival. By the time the fire has dimmed to a low, sullen glow, the family is already asleep. The children curl into a pile of limbs and straw. Your wife pulls the wool blanket over herself and disappears. You sit there a moment longer, staring into the orange haze of dying embers, wondering how many more days like this you have in you. You're not old. You're not young. You're just worn. The pot sits in the ashes, crusted with the remnants of dinner. You'll scrape it in the morning. Or not. You're too tired now. You stand slowly, knees crackling, back aching. You step around the cat, kick away a chicken, and collapse onto your bedding. The straw crunches. Something bites your leg. You don't care. Sleep is not rest. Sleep is forgetting, for a few hours, how hard the next day will be. Let's address the smell. You've been ignoring it. That low, constant, inescapable perfume of rot and sweat and livestock and wood smoke that clings to your body like guilt. But now, with dinner finished and your limbs finally slowing, the full horror of your own stench begins to settle in. You try not to notice. You try to pretend it's the pot, or the dog, or the wet rags in the corner. But it's not. It's you. You stink. Deeply. Profoundly. Biblically. It's not just body odor. It's something worse. Something more permanent. A stew of excretions and environmental residue that has soaked into your pores and refuses to leave. You can smell your own scalp. Your armpits could be used in war. Your feet have their own weather system. And your tunic, that cursed piece of wool you've been sweating in since the last equinox, has evolved into a living creature that feeds on despair and piss steam. You would love to bathe. Honestly, you would. The idea of plunging into a warm tub, scrubbing yourself raw with soap, rinsing your hair, trimming your nails, and feeling even momentary relief. It's the kind of fantasy that keeps you going when your back gives out. But there are problems. First, there is no tub. You don't have a bathhouse. You don't have a private room. You don't even have a basin big enough to fit both feet in at once. There's a wooden bucket near the hearth, but it's for water, laundry, beer, and occasionally vomit. Not exactly a spa experience. Second, you can't afford water. Clean water is heavy, rare, and usually suspicious. Heating it costs wood, would cost labor or coin. Using it for bathing, especially in large amounts, is seen as wasteful, extravagant, even sinful. The church frowns on frequent washing, especially of certain parts. Nakedness tempts the devil. Clean skin invites pride. And pride, as we all know, leads to dancing, and then to hell. You might, once or twice a year, make a pilgrimage to the village bathhouse, if your town even has one. It's a smoke-blackened shed where the floor never dries and the steam carries secrets. You'll sit naked among other villagers, knees to knees, buttocks to buttocks, in tepid, cloudy water that has already embraced 6 other bodies before you. There are no partitions, no drans, no modesty. Men, women, children, goats, all scrubbed together, trading fleas and fungal spores like gossip. Soap? A dream. Most days, you scrub yourself with a rough cloth dipped in ashes. Real soap is made from lye and animal fat, caustic, rank, and expensive. It burns your hands. It stings your eyes. It smells like meat left on a windowsill. You use it sparingly, if at all. Most people just rinse, splash, and scrape. Scrub if you're fancy. Bleed if you're determined. You don't bathe weekly or monthly. You bathe when your body demands it. When the filth builds up so thick it starts to crack and peel. When people start giving you that look. When the dog won't sleep near you. Then, and only then, do you brave the bath. More often, hygiene is performed in fragments. A cloth dab behind the ears. A finger run along the teeth. A bit of spit to clean the corner of your eye. You wipe your hands on your tunic. You wipe your tunic on the wall. The wall wipes itself with moss and time. Let's talk about your skin. It is not smooth. It is not clear. It is not healthy. It is a battlefield. Blisters, boils, rashes, scabs, open sores that never close because they're rubbed raw every day by coarse fabric and salt from your own sweat. You scratch until you bleed. You scratch again. Lice bites cluster behind your knees. Flea bites on your calves. Ringworm on your arms. You don't know what ringworm is, you just call it the circle thing and hope it doesn't spread to your face. Your scalp? A festival of vermin. Lice nest there like it's prime real estate. You've scratched until there's blood under your fingernails. You've used ashes, vinegar, dog fat. Nothing works. Sometimes you shave your head. Sometimes you burn the lice out with a hot blade. Either way, they come back. They always come back. They bring friends. And don't get started on your feet. Constantly wet. Trapped in old leather or bare to the elements. You develop trench rot before the term exists. Your toenails blacken. Your heels crack. Your skin peels in greasy strips. And you walk through it all because stopping is not an option. There is no deodorant, of course. You use herbs sometimes. Rub a crushed leaf under your arms. Chew parsley to mask your breath. But mostly you rely on the shared stench of humanity. Everyone smells. Everyone ignores it. Your nose gets tired and shuts off. You don't notice anymore. You hope others extend the same mercy. Your teeth are worth their own chapter, and they'll get it. But for now, let's just say they're a reflection of the rest of you. Cracked, dirty, inflamed, neglected. You try to clean them sometimes. Maybe with a twig. Maybe with charcoal. Maybe just with your sleeve. But the rot is already there. It started when you were 8 and has been chewing slowly toward your brain ever since. You don't own a towel. You dry off by the fire, shivering in your own steam. You don't own nail clippers. You chew them off. Or you don't. They grow until they curl. Sometimes you cut them with a knife. Sometimes you don't bother. You've never once scrubbed between your toes. And no one ever taught you to. Despite all this, there is one part of you that you do try to keep clean, your soul. Because cleanliness of the body may be questionable, but cleanliness of spirit, that's mandatory. You confess, you pray, you donate to the church, or at least pretend to. You cross yourself when you sneeze. You don't wash your hands, but you wash your guilt. Regularly, thoroughly. Because in a world where dirt lives on your skin, in your clothes, and in your bed, the only thing that gets a regular cleansing is your sin. Night has finally arrived, dragging behind it a sky smeared with soot and silence. The village settles into a kind of low, exhausted hum. Dogs barking distantly, someone coughing up something important, a baby wailing in a neighboring hovel, then suddenly stopping. You're home, if one can call it that, and the day's labor has worn you down to a shape. Not a person, not even a body, just a shape of fatigue. Dinner is long past, your fingers still sticky with pottage and ash, and now it's time to rest. Or at least try, because bedtime in medieval Europe is less a refuge and more a prolonged confrontation with every indignity you've accumulated since sunrise. Your bedding, such as it is, awaits a lumpy pile of straw, bugs, and resignation. The same spot you woke in this morning. The same spot you'll die in, most likely. You kick off your shoes if you had any and immediately regret it. The floor is cold, damp, and uneven, a sponge of dirt and whatever your goat did earlier that no one had the energy to clean. You pick your way through the gloom, stepping over your cousin, avoiding the cat, sliding past a heap of siblings already buried in their own greasy wool. No one has a private corner. No one even has their own side. You sleep where there's space, or where you collapsed the night before. You lower yourself into the straw, trying not to disturb the colony of lice that now lives there full time. They scatter momentarily before regrouping at the nape of your neck and behind your knees. Your tunic scratches your thighs. Your socks, which may or may not be the same ones you wore to the fields, and which may or may not contain another person's initials, are damp and twisted. You don't bother fixing them. Your energy is spent. You are a puppet with its strings cut. Your head rests on a sack of something vaguely soft. It used to be barley, or maybe rags, or maybe a goat's bladder filled with hay. It smells like time and disappointment. You pull a coarse blanket over your shoulders, the same one every member of your family shares, the same one that hasn't been cleaned since the last funeral. It's heavy, itchy, stiff in places where spills turned into crusts. You curl beneath it like a corpse preparing for burial. Then comes the sound, the scratching, the skittering, the unmistakable patter of rats. You hear them in the rafters, in the walls, under the floor. You feel them near your feet. You hear one knock over a tin cup. Another claws at a hanging sack. You hope they find the oats and leave your toes alone. You've heard stories of fingers chewed, of noses nibbled. You don't know if they're true, but you've also seen what's left of a neighbor's cat. And you believe. You shift in your straw bed. A sharp stalk jabs your thigh. You pull it out. Something crawls across your ribs. You slap at it instinctively. It vanishes. Was it a flea? A spider? A beetle? One of the lice who escaped your scalp purge last week? You don't care. You scratch and roll over. Then the cold begins to creep in. It starts at the feet, climbs to the knees, then the small of the back, the shoulders, the fingers. You shiver. You tuck yourself tighter under the blanket. But the blanket's wet at one edge. Someone's child probably drooled on it, or worse. So you adjust again, curling into yourself, pulling your knees to your chest, breathing hot into your hands, and hoping your breath doesn't freeze in your beard. There's no fire tonight. You've run out of kindling. You pray the coals hold some warmth till morning. You close your eyes, and the itching begins. It always does. The moment you lie still, the lice begin their nightly pilgrimage. From scalp to shoulder, from armpit to waistband. Tiny feet exploring your folds. You scratch until it burns. You dig at scabs. You peel dried blood from places you can't see. The blanket rubs your raw spots. You twist and turn. You slap the straw. The straw pokes back. You groan. Sleep teases you. Not with dreams, but with short, sputtering drops into blackness interrupted by twitches, noises, and skin trauma. You doze for 5 minutes, then jolt awake because someone farted or someone rolled over and elbowed your spine, or the baby started crying again, or a rat landed too close for comfort. You breathe through your mouth because the stench is stronger now. A night sweat perfume of humans who have been rotting in wool for weeks. Outside, the wind whistles through the planks of the wall. It howls, leaks, fingers its way through the gaps, and settles on your cheeks. A draft, a reminder, you are not alone. The world is watching, and the world doesn't care. Eventually, you drift, not into deep rest, but into a kind of medieval limbo, half dreaming, half alert, your body never truly relaxing. You dream you're drowning in pottage. You dream your teeth fall out. You dream you're warm and wake up furious. Your limbs twitch. Your mouth tastes like dirt. Your nose whistles. You try to turn, but someone's elbow is in your ribs and someone's foot is in your groin. You give up and lie still. The last thing you hear before sleep finally claims you, if it does, is the sound of your own heartbeat in your ears, echoing like a warning. Because tomorrow is waiting, and it smells exactly like today. You wake in the dark, not because the sun is up, it isn't, but because the church bell is already ringing, and that means you're late. The sound is low, heavy, echoing through the fog with the authority of something older than time and hungrier than death. It doesn't ask for your attention. It commands it. You sit up in your straw nest, spine bending like wet rope, eyes crusted shut, body unwilling. But the church doesn't care how you feel. The church owns the dawn, and it owns you. There is no such thing as freedom of religion here. There's only one belief, one system, one truth carved into every day of your life like scripture on stone. You are nothing. God is everything, and his chosen middlemen, robed, stern, and permanently disappointed in you, are the only ones who can keep you from being roasted alive for eternity by a loving creator. You don't just believe in God. You fear him, you obey him, and you pay for the privilege. You mumble a prayer without thinking. You don't know the Latin, but you know the rhythm, the lulling drone of syllables you've never understood but have heard every day since before you could walk. You cross yourself, scratch your ribs, and climb over your sleeping cousin to get to the door. You don't wash. You don't need to. God can smell your sins regardless. The village path is wet with last night's frost. Your bare feet sting on the frozen mud. You pass the same huddled homes, the same gray bundles of humanity stirring in doorways. Everyone is headed the same way, to the church, not because they want to, but because not going would be noticed. And if you're noticed, you're whispered about. And if you're whispered about, you're visited. And if you're visited, your life becomes very complicated very fast. The church looms like a stone accusation at the center of the village. It is the only building made to last. Thick walls, narrow windows, a roof that doesn't leak, all constructed through the generosity of people who could barely afford bread. Its altar is gold-leafed, its floor is cold, its pews are hard, and its priest is watching. You don't meet his eyes. He wears a robe that cost more than your house, a silver cross that weighs more than your child, and a frown that seems permanently etched by disappointment. He smells faintly of incense and power. You kneel, join the others in prayer, and whisper your shame into the void, hoping that this time, someone or something is listening. There is no room for joy here. No casual fight. The sermons are fire and judgment. The hymns are dirges. The message is always the same. You are filthy. You are weak. You are guilty. And unless you give more, do more, suffer more, you will burn. Not metaphorically, not eventually. Actually, the priest describes hell with such detail you can almost feel the flames licking your calves. He paints it with words like a man who's visited, and maybe he has. You confess weekly, whether you remember your sins or not. You confess envy, even if you're not sure what you envied. You confess impure thoughts, though you've never known purity. You confess laziness because you once sat for 5 minutes and thought about how tired you were. The priest listens. He nods. He punishes. Sometimes with words. Sometimes with penance. Sometimes with cost. Because salvation, of course, isn't free. You tithe. A portion of your harvest, your coin, your animals, whatever you can spare, and often more than that, goes to the church. Not for charity. For maintenance. For candles. For wine. For relics. You've never seen Christ, but you've seen his bones displayed in a silver box. You've kissed the feet of a statue wearing silk robes. You've starved so the bell tower could be repaired. You've eaten mold so the priest could eat meat. You pay not only in goods, but in obedience. The church owns your calendar. It tells you when to fast, when to feast, when to kneel, when to mourn. Half the year is off limits for joy. Saints' days, martyrs' days, holy days of obligation. All sacred, all structured, all strictly enforced. You don't question it. You wouldn't dare. Doubt is heresy. Heresy is contagious. And the cure for contagion is fire. If someone in your village gets sick, you pray. If your cow dies, you pray. If your wife miscarries, you pray harder. The priest comes, mutters, splashes water, waves smoke. If the problem persists, someone must be cursed. A sin must have been committed, or which is nearby. The church doesn't explain nature. It explains blame. You're told to rejoice in suffering. That poverty is holy. That pain is sacred. That the more you endure now, the better your reward in the afterlife. You nod. You accept. What else can you do? You've never known joy without guilt. Laughter without glancing over your shoulder. You say, God willing, before every sentence. You thank him for your ashes. You fear him every hour. And yet, beneath all that piety, something trembles, a thought you're not supposed to have. If God is love, why do you feel so abandoned? If the church is truth, why does it reek of power? If your soul is precious, why is your life so cheap? You silence it. You smother it with prayer. You remind yourself, this is all you've known. This is all anyone has known. The world is fire and is suffering and obedience. And the only way out is through the grave. The bell tolls again. Mass is over. You file out. Your back is stiff. Your knees ache. Your belly growls. But your soul, your filthy, frightened, utterly exhausted soul, has been momentarily scrubbed with holy water and shame. Until next week, at least, if you've been following this journey and thinking to yourself, this is horrible, but at least it's equally horrible for everyone. Allow me to introduce you to medieval womanhood, a state of being where you're not only poor, cold, hungry, and expendable, but also the designated vessel for other people's expectations, pain, and children, in that order. Let's begin with the basics. You are female. That fact alone defines everything about your life before you're even old enough to speak. From the moment the midwife pulls you out and slaps your purple body in a breath, your worth is already being calculated, not in talent, not in curiosity, not in potential, but in womb value. Can you bear children? Can you cook? Can you bleed without dying? Congratulations. You're now the future property of someone else. You won't go to school. You won't inherit land. You won't learn Latin. Your education will consist of watching your mother scrub intestines out of pig carcasses and learning how to scald lice out of a blanket without setting it on fire. If you're lucky, you'll pick up some herbal remedies. If you're unlucky, you'll be accused of witchcraft for using them. Your chores start before your teeth grow in. By the time you're 5, you're hauling firewood. By 7, you're tending geese, weeding the garden, stirring pots, wiping noses, and being shouted at by everyone over the age of 12. Your clothes are always secondhand, patched, stained, wrong-sized, and you learn early how to wrap yourself in rags to hide the bruises or the blood. You sleep beside your siblings and wake up to the same darkness every day. You do not rest. You pause between duties. By the time you are 12, you are of marriageable age, not emotionally ready, not physically safe, just available. Your parents, if they're alive, will trade you off to a man who owns more sheep than your father does. You will be given away like a piece of old furniture, useful, but not expected to last. The man might be 16. He might be 35. It doesn't matter. He needs a wife. You have a uterus. The deal is made. The wedding is not a celebration. It is a transaction. You cry. They tell you to smile. You bleed on the wedding night. They say that proves you're clean. You do not get a honeymoon. You go home to a new house, full of strange people, where you must now cook for another family, serve your husband's parents, feed animals, fix broken tools, and start making babies immediately. You are expected to smile, obey, and produce. Pregnancy comes quickly and frequently. There is no birth control, no real knowledge of how it even works. You conceive and carry and labor and cry and scream and bleed and sometimes die. You do this over and over again. Most women bear between 5 and 10 children in their short lives. Half of them will die before they can speak. Some die in your arms. Some die in your womb. The others might live long enough to bury you. There are no midwives unless you live in a big town. No doctors who will touch you unless your husband pays them. You give birth in a pile of straw while your sister holds your hand and your mother tells you to stop screaming so loudly. The pain is not just expected, it is moralized. You've sinned. You suffer. That's how it works. That's how it's supposed to work. And when you're not birthing or bleeding, you're working. Every hour of every day, you wake first. You sleep last. You cook, you scrub, you haul, you wash, you grind, you patch, you milk, you feed, you soothe. And through all this, you're expected to be modest, silent, humble, pious, and grateful. Grateful for what? That you're not dead? That your last child didn't starve? That your husband only hits you when he's drunk and not when he's sober? Because yes, domestic violence is not just tolerated, it's embedded into the culture. A man is allowed to discipline his wife. He may beat her as long as the stick isn't thicker than his thumb. That's not a metaphor. That's law in some places. And if you dare to speak up, if you complain, if you run, if you resist, you are rebellious. You are dangerous. You are probably a witch. Witchcraft is the one label that gives men permission to kill you with holy approval. You're too mouthy? Witch. Too clever? Witch. Too pretty or not pretty enough or childless or unlucky or left-handed or someone's cow died within a 3-mile radius of you. Witch. You are stripped, shaved, pricked, dunked, burned, broken, interrogated, and finally executed, all in the name of purification. If you outlive all that, if you somehow avoid death in childbirth, starvation, plague, abuse, and accusation, you become a widow. And for a brief, flickering moment, you taste something dangerously close to independence. You might own your husband's tools. You might keep the cottage. You might manage your own field. But that doesn't make you respected. It makes you a target. A strange, unmarried woman with property? Suspicious. Lonely? Suspicious. living alone with a cat. You know where this is going. And then there are the children. Not yours. You raised yours. Now you're raising more. Your daughter's baby. Your dead cousin's orphan. Your neighbor's fifth. Children are currency. They're born with the expectation that half of them will die. No one talks about it. No one mourns loudly. Babies get quiet, go cold, are buried in a blanket near the trees, and life continues. You tell your daughter not to cry. You didn't cry. Your mother didn't cry. You make dinner. You grind oats. The pot still has to boil. There is no childhood here. Children are just tiny workers. They labor. They serve. They obey. And the girls? They learn early what's expected of them. How to bleed quietly. How to smile politely. How to carry shame without making others uncomfortable. And yet, in spite of all this, you endure. Because that's what women do. Not because they're weak, but because they're punished for being strong. You endure without comfort, without medicine, without rest. You endure while bent over, pregnant, infected, barefoot in the mud, squinting a pot of boiling weeds you're calling dinner. You endure through your body, through your pain, through the constant, grinding, invisible labor of being the one who holds the dying world together. No one thanks you. No one asks you. No one even looks at you. But when you disappear, everything collapses. It starts with a cough, just a small, tickling thing in your throat, dry at first, then wet, then sharp enough to bend you double in the field while your ox trudges forward and leaves you behind. No one notices. No one stops. People cough all the time. It's the smoke, it's the dust, it's the air, it's the punishment of God for something someone else probably did. You spit into the dirt. It's red. You wipe your mouth with your sleeve and pretend you didn't see it. That's the first mistake. The second is telling someone. Because once you admit that you're ill, the gears begin to turn. Not the helpful kind. The slow, heavy, religious, suspicious gears that grind people into graves. If you're lucky, you're ignored. If you're unlucky, you're treated. And treatment, in this world, is worse than neglect. Because medieval medicine isn't medicine. It's ritual. It's theater. It's a deeply confused blend of astrology, ancient Roman hand-me-downs, and outright guesswork delivered by men who wear aprons stained with pus and call it learning. You lie in bed or on the ground, depending on what's available, fevered, aching, delirious. The village healer arrives, or maybe the priest, or maybe the barber surgeon who sharpens his knives on the same stone he uses for gutting pigs. He examines your tongue, your urine, your pulse, not to help, but to assign you to one of the four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, or yellow bile. That's it. That's the theory. You are sick because one of these invisible fluids is too high or too low. The cure? Bring it back into balance. How? Let's just say you're going to lose some fluids. They bleed you first. Always. With a knife, or a leech, or a hot needle, depending on the whim and tools available. You are held down while someone opens a vein and watches your life pour into a bowl. If you get dizzy, good. That means it's working. If you faint, better. If you die, well, the infection was probably too far gone anyway. Your blood is collected and sometimes examined. Dark blood is bad. Bright blood is worse. Clotted blood is either fatal or curable, depending on what the stars say. If you survive the bleeding, they try other methods. You may to drink infusions of herbs that may or may not be poisonous. Boiled bark, crushed beetles, burnt owl hearts mixed with wine. Recipes passed down from monks who once read part of Galen's treatise by candlelight and decided it applied to everything from toothache to plague. You swallow the concoction. You vomit. That's good. They say the body is purging itself. You shiver, your skin boils, your stomach turns inside out. They nod approvingly and say you're on the mend. If your fever rises, they place you in a room with smoke. Not incense, not something holy, just burning straw or old dung, because the air needs to be corrected. They believe in miasma, bad air that causes illness, and so they attempt to cancel it out with worse air. You inhale smoke until your eyes water and your throat cracks. You beg for water. You are told to wait. Water is dangerous. It throws the humors off. Better to chew some mint and pray. And if none of it works, which of course it doesn't, then they escalate. You are shaved. You are scalded. You are blessed. The priest arrives with relics. A bone fragment of some long-dead martyr is pressed to your forehead while prayers are mumbled. Holy water is sprinkled. Your bed is turned to face east. You are urged to confess your sins, just in case. Because even the church, even the doctor, even your own mother can see it now. You're not going to make it. But you might not die. Not yet. You linger. And here's where it gets worse. Because medieval sickness doesn't just strike fast. It stays. You don't get the flu and bounce back. You don't rest for 2 days and feel better. You rot in your own skin for weeks. Your limbs swell. Your mouth dries. Your teeth loosen. You lose the strength to sit up, then the ability to move, then the dignity to ask for help. You soil yourself. You cry from pain, then from shame, then from confusion. People stop visiting. The house goes quiet. Your children look at you like you're already gone. Your hair falls out in clumps. Your nails blacken. Your eyes grow dull. You're still alive, technically, but the light is going out day by day, inch by inch. And no one knows why. It could be the pox. It could be poison. It could be bad blood, bad air, bad spirits, bad stars. No one can agree, but everyone agrees on one thing. It's your fault. You must have sinned, or angered someone, or eaten something on the wrong day, or been cursed by a neighbor you refused to help last Lent. If you're a woman, they might blame your womb. The wandering womb, an actual theory, says that your uterus has migrated through your body and is strangling your lungs or brain out of jealousy or boredom. The cure? Fumigation. They light a fire beneath you and try to smoke the womb back into place. This is not a joke. This is real, and it burns. If you're wealthy, your treatment gets fancier, but not better. You're surrounded by silk sheets, better incense, and servants who rotate the cushions under your leaking body. The physician shows up with an expensive bag full of polished tools and expensive lies. He charges your family a month's income to apply rose oil to your ulcers. He leaves. You still die. And when you finally die, whether in 3 days or 3 weeks, your suffering is not over. Because now comes the spiritual anxiety, the eternal horror of dying with unconfessed sins. The priest is rushed to your side to capture your last breath. He mutters Latin as your eyes glaze. He anoints your head, your hands, your feet. If you're lucky, he gets there in time. If not, well, too late. Straight to hell. You should have died more promptly. But let's say, somehow, you don't die. You recover. Slowly. Painfully. You're left with new scars, a new limp, a hacking cough that never leaves. You can no longer work the field, so you're a burden now. You try to help. You fail. Your body is a ruin. Your neighbors suspect you. They mutter. Maybe you made a deal with something. Maybe you're marked. You survive sickness, only to become the sick one. Forever. And worst of all, you're still here. Still in this village. Still in this time. Still expected to pick up your tools and go back to work like nothing happened. But now you know. Now you've seen what's waiting inside your own flesh. And it's not healing. It's just decay paused. It begins slowly, not with a blizzard or a storm, but with a silence, a stillness in the air that arrives without permission. One morning, you step outside and the wind feels different. Sharper, meaner. The mud has stiffened under your feet. The sky has turned from leaden gray to bone white, and the birds are gone. Everything is quiet. The earth is holding its breath. And so are you. You've felt cold before, in the fields at dawn, in the drafts of your hovel, when rain soaked you to the skin and the fire died in the hearth. But this is different. This is winter, true medieval winter, not a postcard, not a holiday, a months-long siege by a force of nature that doesn't want you dead. It wants you suffering, slowly, completely, intimately. The roof starts leaking again. It always does. The thatch was never made to survive more than a season or two, and yours is already in its fourth winter. You've patched it with straw, dung, old rags, but the frost still gets in. It slides through the slats like a thief, settles in your bones, stiffens your breath, and wraps around your fingers until they no longer bend. You light a fire. Of course you do, but there's no wood. There was never enough wood. You used most of it weeks ago trying to dry out the pottage. What's left is damp. Twigs, mossy branches, scraps of fencing, furniture you promised yourself you'd never burn. You break it apart with numb hands, splintering it into the smallest pieces, praying for sparks. Smoke fills the room. Your eyes sting. The children cough. But the fire doesn't catch. Not really. Just a glow. A hint. Enough to make shadows dance and give the rats something to warm their feet on. You pile on clothes. Everything you own. 2 tunics. A wool cloak. Socks that feel like wet rope. You wrap your feet in rags, your hands in old linen, your head in a bonnet that smells like your grandmother's funeral. Still, it's not enough. Your breath fogs the air. Your knees tremble. You curl near the hearth like a dying cat. The heat never reaches your skin. It's not fire anymore. It's just the memory of fire. The water in the bucket freezes. The pot won't boil. The beer turns sour. You break ice from the rim of the trough to wash your face and feel your skin crack like pottery. You bleed a little. No one notices. Everyone's skin is bleeding. Your wife's fingers are raw from grinding grain in the cold. Your children's noses run endlessly. Their cheeks are cracked. Their lips are purple. Their breath rattles. You sleep in a pile, all of you, not from affection, but from strategy. You need the body heat. You lie on straw, under one woolen blanket, packed so tightly you can barely move. Someone always has to be on the edge, and the edge is where the frost bites first. Whoever ends up there tonight may not wake up. No one volunteers. The livestock is suffering too. The chicken stopped laying. The goat is coughing. The pigs huddle together and squeal at night. Not from fear, but from cold. You can't feed them properly. You barely have enough for yourself. The hay is nearly gone, and the roots in the cellar have started to rot. You find mold on everything. You cut it off. You eat the rest. There is no variety in your meals. Every day, the same sludge of grain, onions, and regret. Sometimes you skip a meal. Sometimes two. You ration the bread so tightly it starts to taste like betrayal. You tell your youngest to chew slower. He doesn't understand why. Your wife hands you her portion. You pretend not to notice how hollow her cheeks have become. You dream of warmth, of bread with crust, of butter, thick and yellow, melting on your tongue, of meat, just a bite, just a sliver. You wake with your jaw clenched, gnawing on your own tongue. Outside, the snow begins. At first, it's quiet, peaceful even. Then it builds, piles, blocks the door, collapses the shed, covers the last of the firewood. You dig through it, barehanded, and feel your nails tear. You can't tell if your fingers are cold or gone. And then the sickness starts. Colds become fevers. Fevers become coughs. Coughs become death. It spreads fast, through touch, through breath, through share blankets and bowls and spoons. Someone starts wheezing. Someone else stops waking. The village bell tolls more often. No one asks who it's for. You already know. You dig graves in the frozen ground. It takes hours. The soil is like stone. Your shovel bends. Your fingers bleed. You bury them shallow. There's no time for proper rites. The priest is sick too. The rats are bold. You hear them scratching at the fresh earth before you've even walked away. Your world shrinks. You don't visit neighbors. You don't go to mass. You stay inside, huddled in the dark, sharing heat and coughs. The days blur together. Gray morning, gray afternoon, gray night. The sun never shines. The sky never clears. The cold never leaves. It seeps into your mind, into your marrow, into your dreams. You pray, not with words, with desperation, with clenched teeth and fevered sweat. You whisper to the fire, to the roof, to the straw, to anything that might be listening. Just let us survive. Just let us last until spring. And sometimes it works. Sometimes you see a thaw, a trickle from the eaves, a patch of mud where the snow melted, a faint, sweet stink of rotting grass. And it smells like hope. You dare to believe. You open the door. The air still bites, but not as deep. The sun returns, low and pale and tired. You cry. You don't know why. But other times, it doesn't work. The fire dies. The food runs out. The roof caves in. A child doesn't wake up. A parent doesn't move. You keep going. You bury them. You patch the blanket. You carry on. Because there is no alternative. You thought you were safe. After months of frostbite, black bread, dead livestock, and waking up each morning just to check if you were still breathing, the winter finally released its grip. The snow melted. The sun returned. The birds sang. The children played barefoot in the thawing mud. You felt something like hope. You even smiled, briefly, foolishly, because you thought warmth meant relief. It doesn't. Summer isn't your salvation. It's just another punishment served hot. There's no gentle transition. The warmth arrives like a fist. 1 week, you're huddled near the hearth, teeth chattering. The next, you're peeling off your wool in the middle of the day, dripping with sweat, and discovering just how many layers of grime, lice, and mildew have fermented inside your clothing. Your tunic, stiff from smoke and grease, now clings to your back like a second skin made of wet bread. You don't dry. You bake. The sun is not kind. It beats down from a sky so pale it hurts to look at. It cooks the roof, the walls, the animals, your scalp. You try to work in the fields, but the heat presses on your skull like a stone. The dirt turns from mud to dust. Every step raises a puff that gets into your nose, your mouth, your eyes. You cough, but the dust sticks. You drink water, but it's warm, metallic, alive with things that move. You still drink it. You have no choice. Your body becomes your enemy. It sweats constantly, endlessly, soaking your sleeves, your collar, your underarms, your thighs. There is no way to clean yourself. You stink. Everyone stinks. But now the stench is richer, riper, deeper. It has evolved. You smell like onions left in a cellar too long, like meat just beginning to turn. Your feet develop a fungal musk. Your armpits could clear a room, but no one leaves. They all smell the same, and the flies come. They arrive in clouds, like curses with wings. They land on everything, on your face, in your eyes, on your food, on your skin, in your open mouth while you sleep. You wave them away, swat at them, curse them, it doesn't matter. They return. They always return. They breed in your compost, your latrine, your wounds. They lay eggs in the trash pit. You find larvae in your turnips. You stop asking questions. Food spoils faster than you can eat it. The bread molds. The beer sours. The pottage ferments. You eat it anyway. There's no cold storage. The cellar is full of rats. You carve the green parts off your cheese and pray the rest won't kill you. Sometimes it does. You bury the child and eat the cheese anyway. The animals suffer with you. The pigs pant, the chickens wilt, the goat lies flat in the shade and refuses to move. They stink worse than you. Their droppings dry in the sun, then powder into dust, which the wind carries through your window and into your stew. You try to close the shutters, but it traps the heat. You open them again and let the stink in. You choose ventilation over dignity. Your skin burns. The sun isn't filtered by sunscreen or soft fabric. It tears you open. Your nose peels. Your arms blister. Your neck turns a permanent shade of red. You don't tan. You scorch. You sweat into the blisters. They pop. They ooze. You rub them with lard. It doesn't help. Bathing? Impossible. The streams are low, warm, and fouled with animal waste. The village well smells like wet stone and dead frogs. The bathhouse, if it's open, is thick with other people's sweat and skin. You rinse your face with a rag, splash your arms with hot water from a pot, and call it clean. Then you go outside, and it starts again. The air itself goes sour. Thick, heavy. You breathe, and it's like drinking soup. It carries every smell, sweat, rot, manure, smoke, cooked cabbage, old beer, the distant reek of something dead. You don't know what. You don't care anymore. You've learned not to inhale too deeply. It only leads to gagging. And then, of course, the dead things. Because things die in summer. Fust. Cats, birds, pigs, infants. A chicken goes still in the corner. You toss in the pit. You don't bury it. Too much work and the ground's too hard. The pit fills quickly. Flies take it. Then the rats. Then the smell. You move your bed farther from the window. It doesn't help. Nothing helps. People die too. The old, the sick, the frail. Dehydration. Diarrhea. Wounds that fester. Infections that boil. A scratch becomes a gash. A gash becomes a sore. A sore becomes a hole. You see bone. You stuff it with moss. You don't talk about it. The worst is when the plague comes. Not every year, but when it does, summer is its perfect season. Warm, wet, full of life. And death. The signs are always the same. A swollen neck, a blackened finger, a neighbor who stops coming outside. The bell tolls more often. No one goes near the house. The priest walks by with incense and won't look you in the eye. So you endure the summer just like you endured the winter by waiting. You drink warm beer, eat spoiled barley, sleep in sweat, scratch until you bleed, wipe your face with your sleeve, and keep moving. You don't stop. You can't. Stopping is when the rot sets in. One day, the breeze changes. You smell something crisp. The first leaf falls. You smile. Not because autumn is better, but because it's different. Because it means this version of suffering is almost over. You survive the heat. Now you can go back to freezing. You're thirsty. Of course you are. You've been sweating all morning, hauling tools, turning compost, baking inside wool that smells like boiled feet. Your lips are cracked. Your mouth feels like sand. Your tongue sits in your mouth like a piece of rawhide. You need water, not a luxury, a necessity, a basic right of the body. But in the Middle Ages, water is not your friend. You step outside and look around. There is no tap, no kitchen sink, no filtered bottle in your satchel, no safe municipal pipe humming beneath the soil. What you have instead is a choice between 5 different sources of water, each worse than the last, each with a distinct flavor profile of despair and diarrhea. The first option is the well, the village's official source of drinking water, built decades ago and worshipped ever since as the closest thing to a miracle. It's a round pit lined with stone and covered with a wooden lid that warps in the summer and freezes in the winter. You lower a bucket down on a rope that frays with age, hear the distant splash, haul it back up with both arms straining, and peer inside. The water is yellow. It has floating things. Maybe straw, maybe bug legs, maybe a mouse that fell in and never got out. You drink it anyway. You hold your nose. You pretend it tastes like nothing. It tastes like wet rot and coins. You burp later. Your stomach churns. You sit down suddenly because your body isn't sure whether to expel or digest. Your cousin had the same water last week. He hasn't stood up since. His eyes are hollow. His bed is wet. He whispers about devils in his gut. The second option is a stream, not quite a river, more like a trickle of water that winds through the outskirts of the village, slow and shallow. You think, maybe this is better. It looks clearer. It moves at least. But then you remember, this is also where the pigs bathe, where the cattle cross, where the tanner dumps lie, where someone's child probably soiled themselves yesterday. You find a dead frog at the edge. You drink upstream. It doesn't help. The third option is rainwater, if you're lucky and it's raining. You leave out a bucket or a basin. You hope birds don't crap in it. You hope your neighbors don't steal it. When the rain stops, you carry it inside like it's treasure, swatting away flies, filtering out the leaves with your fingers, sipping it slowly, and still, it tastes like roof dust and bird feet. It's better than the well, but better here just means you might survive long enough to regret it. So what do people drink? Beer, but not the kind you're thinking of. No hops, no fizz, no refreshment. It's small beer, made weak on purpose, just enough alcohol to kill off some of the crawling things in the water. You boil barley mash in a pot, pour in some yeast if you have it, let sit for days, then drink it warm, sour, and flat. It tastes like someone washed their hands in porridge and called it a beverage. You drink it anyway. So does your child. So does the priest. So does the goat sometimes. Beer is not a celebration. It's hydration strategy. You brew it often in huge vats and ration it like medicine. You never feel refreshed. You feel less likely to die. If you're rich, you have wine. Not because you're fancier, but because you can afford grapes and servants to press them. But even wine spoils quickly. It turns to vinegar. It stings your throat. You drink it anyway, because it's not full of worm eggs. Sometimes you're desperate. Sometimes you drink from puddle. You tell yourself the mud is just earth. You pretend not to see the oily sheen on the surface. Sometimes you squeeze water from boiled roots, from moss, from grass in the morning. Sometimes you drink your own sweat. Sometimes, and no one admits this, you mix water with milk to stretch it, even if the milk's gone sour. And when you finally get sick, and no one escapes it forever, your body begins the real punishment. The cramps come first. Deep, twisting, agonizing. You fold over yourself like a torn sack. Your bowels become a waterfall. You vomit until your ribs feel like they're separating. You scream. You cry. Nothing helps. You're told to pray. You do. You beg for clean water. It's not coming. You grow pale. Then yellow. Then gray. You stop sweating. Your mouth dries completely. Your lips crack and scab. Your breath smells like rot. You hallucinate. You pass blood. The local healer brings you holy water. She made it herself, with herbs, ash, and the priest's spit. It burns your tongue. You try to say thank you, but your voice is gone. And the worst part? It doesn't have to be this way. Clean water exists. In deep springs, in glacier-fed lakes, in aqueducts built long before your village was even a hill. But you have no access to it. No tools. No science. No power. You are too poor to boil. Too tired to dig, too afraid to question the taste in your mouth. So you drink what you have, and you hope the beer holds out. And if it doesn't, well, at least you'll die hydrated. Let's pretend, for a moment, that you've reached your breaking point. Your armpits itch like a cursed forest. Your groin smells like boiled onion soup left on a windowsill in July. Your scalp has become a thriving civilization of lice. And your family has stopped sitting near you, which is difficult in a one-room house where everyone sleeps on the same straw like sacks of meat. You've scratched yourself raw, your clothes are stiff with months of sweat, and you've started to wonder if you'll actually begin to ferment. So you decide to do the unthinkable. You decide to bathe. Now, in modern terms, taking a bath conjures up images of solitude, warmth, and scented bubbles. A personal, soothing ritual. In the Middle Ages, it's something closer to a communal act of desperation, carried out in a noisy, steamy, infection-prone wooden shack that doubles as a meeting place, a rumor mill, and occasionally a brothel. Assuming your village even has a bathhouse and that it hasn't burned down or been converted into a storage shed for sheep feed, you gather your courage and your one good cloth and make the pilgrimage. You bring nothing else. Soap is rare. Towels are a myth. You might have a comb made from a pig's rib. That's your spa kit. Luxury begins now. The bathhouse is a square structure made of warped timber and fungus-black beams, half sunken into the mud at the edge of town. The windows are slits, the door is open. Inside, the air is thick enough to chew, a fog of steam, smoke, and body stench that wraps around your face like a hot towel of sin. You cough immediately. Everyone does. There's no privacy. That concept doesn't exist here. People are already inside, already naked. Some washing, some soaking, some just sitting quietly, contemplating whether the itch between their toes is fungal, spiritual, or both. You avert your eyes, but there's nowhere to look that doesn't involve someone's sagging backside or hairy shoulder. Modesty died centuries ago. It is now buried beneath a pile of communal soap rags. You find a space. It's slippery. You lower yourself into the tub, which isn't really a tub, more like a barrel cut in half, already occupied by cloudy water and at least two suspicious floating hairs. It's warm. At first, that feels good. Then you start thinking about where the warmth came from, and the feeling changes. The water is shared. The water is reused. It has seen things. You're the fifth person in this vat. You feel it, the skin particles, the toe grease, the communal gristle. You tell yourself it's fine. You try to relax. Someone sneezes behind you. You flinch. The water splashes. You hope it wasn't contagious. Bath attendants, if there are any, are teenagers paid in soup and trauma. They pour buckets of hot water over your head, mumbling instructions in 3 dialects. You get one pass with a soapy rag, made from animal fat and lye. It smells like mutton and regret. You scrub under your arms, between your legs, behind your ears. It burns. That means it's working, or it means you've opened a wound. Either way, you keep going. There is no shampoo. You dunk your head, rub at your scalp, feel something crawl under your fingernails, and pretend it's just a twig. You rub your skin until it peels, until it squeaks, until you start to feel human again. And that's when you realize it's already time to get out. There's a queue. You've had your turn. Next, you step out dripping, instantly cold, and immediately dirtier than when you entered. Because there are no towels. You air dry, in a shack, in a breeze, surrounded by 40 other damp peasants trying not to make eye contact with your flaccid shame. You wring out your tunic, which you didn't wash. Of course not. That would be a waste. It's just going to soak up your filth again anyway. You dress. Damp, sticky, itchy, but somehow slightly better. At least the lice seem confused. For now, you walk home in silence, your feet squishing in your shoes, your skin tight and raw. You smell like wet goat, which is an improvement. You feel lighter, almost clean, almost. You return to your hovel and lie down, warm from the bath, proud of yourself. You've done it. You've performed hygiene. You have conquered the beast. And then, within an hour, it's all undone. Because your child sneezes in your face. Because the straw pokes through your blanket and rubs the back of your knees raw. Because the dog licks your foot. Because you go outside to piss and step ankle deep in human waste. Because you fall asleep sweating under the wool and wake up soaked in your own skin. By morning, the lice have regrouped. Your armpits itch, your scalp stings, and you smell, once again, like you. You will not bathe again for months, maybe a year, maybe longer, because it takes too much effort, too much firewood, too much nudity, too much shame. You will wait until your neighbors complain, until your spouse insists, until your own reflection makes you flinch, if you even have a mirror, which you don't. So you return to the dirt. Because the dirt forgives. The dirt accepts. The dirt, in the end, always wins. You're ill. Not just tired, not just sore, sick. Something inside you has snapped, boiled, or begun to rot. It started a few days ago with a dull ache behind your eyes, then a tightness in your gut, then the kind of pain that feels like a blade twisting under the skin. You've stopped eating. You've stopped sleeping. Your sweat smells strange. You've begun talking to the walls. And now your neighbors are concerned, not for your health, but for your soul. The priest has already visited once. He sprinkled holy water, muttered Latin, and told you to make peace with God, which you tried, but God hasn't been answering. So now, as a last resort, they send for the only other man who might help. The doctor, except he's not a doctor, not the way you understand it. He has no degree, no formal education, no license. What he has is a sack of tools, a handful of Latin phrases he can't pronounce, a collection of dried herbs he doesn't fully trust, and an ego inflated by fear, rumor, and pure medieval confidence. He arrives smelling of cloves and sweat, wearing a robe that hasn't been washed since his last plague house, and an expression of theatrical concern, as if your death might slightly inconvenience his evening plans. He begins with observation. Not of your symptoms, that would be too scientific. No, he studies your urine. Not under a microscope, because those don't exist yet, but by holding the flask up to the light and describing the color as though he were judging wine. Cloudy, he mutters. A little thick, possibly choleric. You don't know what that means. He doesn't either, but he nods sagely, as if divine knowledge is pooling at the bottom of the jar. Then he examines your tongue. He squints. He tugs at it. He makes a note on a scrap of parchment using ink made from crushed gall and rust. He smells your breath. He taps your chest. He asks if your dreams have been sinful. This is not small talk. It's diagnosis. Your illness, you see, is not just in your body. It's in your balance of humors, your moral compass, and your astrological misalignment. He asks for your birth date and the hour of your conception. You don't know. He frowns. Finally, he declares the cause. Your humors are out of balance. Maybe too much blood. Maybe not enough bile. Either way, he knows exactly what to do. Bleeding. Always bleeding. He pulls out a blade. Not a scalpel. That's a luxury. Just a short, blunt, not quite clean knife. He chooses a vein, usually in the arm or neck, and slices it open with ceremonial flair. A bowl is placed beneath to catch the evidence. You watch your blood trickle, then stream, then gush. The doctor watches too, nodding with professional detachment. We must release the bad humors, he says, as if your soul has backed up like a medieval toilet. You grow pale. You feel cold. You ask if it's working. He says yes, because if you're weaker, it must mean the disease is weaker too. He wraps the wound with a rag that smells like cheese. He does not wash his hands. Still breathing? Good. Time for the poultice. He smears something on your chest. A mix of warm lard, garlic, goose dung, crushed petals, powdered bone, and either vinegar or wine, depending on availability and how much he's already drunk. It sizzles slightly. Your skin burns. You cry out. He smiles. That's a sign the treatment is penetrating. Your fever doesn't break. You begin to tremble. So now it's time for purgatives. You're handed a wooden bowl of something brown and moving. It tastes like sour ale and horse breath. Within minutes, your insides explode. You vomit until your stomach muscles lock. You soil yourself without warning. The doctor says this is a good sign. Your body is cleansing itself. Still not improving? Then you're given leeches. One on the neck, one behind the ear, two near the groin. They attach like old debts and suck until they fall off. The blood runs freely. You feel lightheaded. The doctor praises the leeches. God's tiny physicians, he calls them. You wonder if they can finish the job and kill you outright. If the sickness persists, and it will, he escalates. Cupping, where heated glass is pressed to your skin to draw out invisible poisons. You scream when the flesh bubbles. Then comes trepanation if he thinks the illness is in your head. A small hole drilled into the skull to let out evil spirits. It doesn't help. It never helps. But it makes the doctor look like he's doing something important. Meanwhile, you lie there, fading. Your body is failing. You're breathing shallow. Your lips cracked. You see things. You hear voices. Your loved ones pray over you. The priest returns. The doctor steps back to give space to the Holy Spirit, but not before whispering that your family still owes him 3 chickens and a sack of flour for services rendered. If you die, they'll say he tried his best. If you survive, it will be a miracle, not a result of anything he did. Either way, he wins. And you? You become a cautionary tale or a walking ruin. Bent, blind in one eye, trembling, toothless, afraid of loud sounds. And still, people will say you're lucky. Because at least the doctor didn't bring the barber surgeon. He's the one with the bone saw, and he doesn't knock you out. You made it through illness, cold, dirt, hunger, and humiliation. You've survived childbirth, rot, bad beer, and medieval medicine. You worked until your hands bled and slept beside rodents until they started to feel like pets. And yet, for all your suffering, there's still one thing that can ruin everything. One thing that cuts through the already miserable fabric of your life like a flaming sword. The law, or more precisely, the thing they call justice. Because in the Middle Ages, justice isn't about fairness. It isn't about innocence. It's about order, about appearances, about someone being punished, and making sure the rest of you are too terrified to ever ask questions again. Truth is optional. Guilt is assumed. And mercy is a heretical rumor. It doesn't take much. A misplaced word, a suspicious glance, a missing chicken, a loaf of bread that vanished during a famine. Maybe the priest didn't like your tone. Maybe your neighbor's cow miscarried, and someone remembered you muttered under your breath near the fence last week. You might be hauled in front of the local reeve just for sneezing at the wrong funeral. And once you're accused, that's it. You are guilty until proven dead. There's no lawyer, no evidence, no presumption of innocence. The court is a smoky room in the back of the Lord's Manor or a crude wooden bench in the village square. The judge is the same man who taxes your farm. The jury is made of people who hate you, owe you, or fear being associated with you. The testimony against you is hearsay, dream visions, or the confident opinion of a town drunk. You stand before them, hunched, shaking, exhausted, starving. You try to speak. You're told to shut up. You try to explain. Your told explanation is an insult to God. You try to weep. They call it manipulation. You try to be silent. That's guilt. You are trapped inside a ritual designed not to find truth, but to create a story. A beginning, the crime, a middle, your punishment, and an end, the warning to everyone else. You are the moral of someone else's tale. And if the story calls for drama, well, then it's time for torture. Torture is not used to punish. It is used to clarify, to reveal the hidden evil inside you. Because no one believes that you're innocent. They believe you haven't admitted the truth yet. And what better way to help you remember your sins than by tying you to a bench and stretching your joints until they dislocate? The rack is not a metaphor. It's a wooden frame, ropes tied to your wrists and ankles, cranked by a man who drinks vinegar and wears a leather apron crusted with other people's regrets. Every turn of the wheel lengthens your body. You feel your limbs tear from their sockets like chicken wings. You scream. They ask questions. You don't even know what they want anymore. So you confess to everything. You stole bread. You cursed the crops. You poisoned the well. You talked to a frog that looked like your cousin. You met the devil in the woods and signed his ledger with a rusty nail. You flew on a broomstick made of pig bones. You slept with Satan and then stole the vicar's socks. None of it makes sense. None of it has to. They just need a confession. If the rack doesn't work, they try thumb screws, metal clamps that crush your fingers until the bones split like dry twigs. Or the boot, a wooden box packed with wedges and hammered until your legs pulp like fruit. Or the strap-a-doo, where you're hung by the arms behind your back and dropped repeatedly until your shoulders pop like overripe fruit. And all of this is done not in a dungeon, but in public, because justice must be seen to be effective. Which brings us to the grand finale, the execution. It's not enough to punish you. You must become a lesson, a warning, a spectacle, something that says to the villagers, this is what happens when you step out of line. The square is swept. The children are brought forward. The priest blesses the sight. The executioner sharpens his axe, or dulls it, depending on how much you annoyed the bailiff. Sometimes you're hanged, not with a drop, but slowly, so your legs kick for 5 long minutes while the crowd debates whether you deserve it. Sometimes you're burned, especially if they called you a witch. You're tied to a post, surrounded by straw, and set alight in front of your entire social circle. The fire is smoky. The rope burns before the flames reach your face. You scream for 20 minutes while everyone pretends they're learning something. Sometimes they get creative, boiling, quartering, buried alive. If you're noble, you might be lucky enough to be beheaded, assuming the executioner's not drunk or nervous or lazy. If he misses, and he often does, he'll need 2 or 3 swings to finish the job. The crowd winces, then cheers, and when it's over, your body, or what's left of it, is dumped in a pit, or hung on a wall, or displayed on a spike. Your name is cursed, or forgotten. Your family is ruined, and your death is used to justify the system that made you suffer in the first place. Justice has been served. The people feel safe, and the wheel keeps turning. You wake up choking on your own spit, heart pounding, soaked in night sweat because you dreamed again that you were in hell. Not in a metaphorical sense. Not a bad day or a guilty conscience. No, a real, hot, eternal, screaming hell, with devils prodding your genitals with red-hot pitchforks while your grandmother watches and nods in disappointment. You open your eyes, stare into the dark of your hovel, and listen to the wind whistle through the slats. Maybe it was just a dream. Maybe, but maybe not. Because in the Middle Ages, hell is not a concept. It's a destination, a threat, a fate, a weapon, a place more vivid than heaven, more real than Rome, more certain than death itself. And the only thing standing between you and eternal damnation, the only hope, the only defense, is the church, which of course owns your life and your death and everything in between. You were baptized before you knew how to cry. You were taught the sign of the cross before you knew your own name. You learned to kneel before you learned to walk straight. Your first lessons weren't numbers or letters. They were sins. Original, mortal, venial, categories of wrongdoing stacked like wood piles, waiting to collapse on your soul. The world is dangerous, yes, but the afterlife? That's where the real horror begins. So you pray, constantly, mechanically, out of habit, fear, obligation. Morning prayer, midday prayer, evening prayer, prayer before meals, prayer before shitting, prayer for rain, for crops, for plague, for forgiveness. You mumble the Latin syllables like a spell you don't understand, hoping God prefers rhythm over comprehension. And then there's confession, your regular ritual humiliation. You kneel before a man in robes, eyes averted, and unload your soul. You list every impure thought, every lazy day, every envious glance at someone else's ox. Did you lie about the barley harvest? Did you think about Marta, the brewer's daughter, in an unclean way? Did you forget to thank God when your pig survived the pox? The priest nods solemnly. He doesn't smile. He never smiles. He assigns you penance, prayers, fasting, humiliation, and tells you to do better. You leave the church feeling lighter, or sicker, or scared, or all three. You're not sure if God forgave you, but you're definitely sure that someone wrote it down. And then there's tithing, giving a portion of your grain, eggs, labor, or actual coin, if by some miracle you have any, to the church. Not for charity, not for the poor, but for candles, for wine, for relics, for the cathedral roof. The priest eats meat while you gnaw turnips. He drinks wine while you drink the sweat of your brow. But you don't complain. Complaining is a sin. So is jealousy. So is thinking too hard about how the priest got a new cloak while your baby died of cold. You're told that the church is here to protect you. But what it really does is watch. It records. It judges. It whispers in your ear every time you have a thought that might displease the Lord. It tells you your pain is noble. Your poverty is divine. Your suffering is proof that you're righteous. That the more you hurt now, the better your reward will be in the next life. Which, by the way, isn't guaranteed. Heaven isn't for everyone. It's for the truly holy, which you are not. And hell isn't the only thing to fear. There's purgatory, a gray middle place, full of fire and punishment, where you'll roast for a few hundred years before maybe being allowed into paradise. Unless your family buys your soul out with enough prayers and donations, which again, they can't afford. So you'll probably stay there forever, like a soul simmering in divine soup, surrounded by others who couldn't afford heaven either. But there is a loophole. If you go on pilgrimage, walking hundreds of miles through bandit country, eating dirt, sleeping in bushes, kissing bones in churches you've never heard of, you might earn grace. If you join a crusade, slaughter unbelievers, and die on holy ground, you skip the queue to heaven. If you buy enough indulgences, little notes from the church that say this sin is canceled, sold at fairs and booths like cheap miracles, you might dodge the flames. It's not religion. It's a spiritual tax system. Sin payment, guilt fee, damnation, Bagain bin Salvation. And yet you need it. You can't escape it. The church owns the calendar. It owns your week, your year, your entire emotional vocabulary. Every feast, every fast, every wedding, every birth, every funeral. It's all under God's gaze. You can't plow a field without a blessing. You can't drink a beer without thanking a saint. You can't die without permission. The church tells you that suffering is noble, that women are temptresses, that Jews are evil, that your dead baby went to limbo, that your dreams are warnings, that the devil is watching, that your desires are filth, that your thoughts are sins, that joy is dangerous, that pain is holy, and if you ever question it, you're a heretic. And heresy isn't punished by silence. It's punished by fire. So you pray, even if no one listens, even if your knees bleed, even if your stomach growls louder than your voice. Because it's better to kneel in mud than to burn in eternity. And because everyone else is watching. And because you were born afraid. You were born screaming into straw, pulled from blood and water with bare hands by a woman who's delivered more goats than humans. You were slapped, rapped, and baptized before your mother even stood up. You didn't get a name right away. Not because your family was lazy, but because they weren't sure you'd live long enough to need one. Half of you won't. The graveyard beside the chapel is full of children who never learned to walk. You're not special. You're just lucky enough to have made it to the next stage, servant of the house. There is no childhood in the medieval world. No escurier, no picture books, no warm beds, gentle words, or quiet afternoons. There are no toys except sticks, bones, and whatever rolled under the table 3 winters ago. If you're a child, you work, not in the future. Now, at 5 years old, you're already hauling water, shoveling dung, watching pigs, and running errands between homes with a satchel full of eggs and the silent knowledge that if you drop even one, your father will take the price out of your hide. You're not coddled. You are not protected. You are not considered innocent. You are considered unfinished, a small, unreliable adult with sticky fingers, a weak bladder, and no concept of debt. But that doesn't matter. You are part of the family economy now. You are a unit of labor, one that eats too much and contributes too little, until someone finds a way to monetize you. If you're a boy, your path is clear. Your job is to become a man as quickly as possible, which means work, obedience, silence, and hitting things with a stick until you understand the concept of war. You're given a tunic, a task, and a place in the field. You plow with your father, pick weeds with your older brothers, haul firewood with your bleeding fingers, and are occasionally kicked by livestock just to remind you you're replaceable. You're shouted at, slapped, ignored, and fed last. Your knees are always scraped. Your nose is always running. You don't remember what it's like not to be tired. If you're a girl, you belong to the kitchen, the hearth, the cradle, and eventually the bed of some man twice your age who thinks your dowry is a bit small but tolerable. You learn early how to knead dough, mince socks, and carry your younger siblings like sacks of potatoes. You're praised when you're quiet, blamed when the soup burns, and taught that your worth lies between your thighs and behind your eyes. Keep your legs closed and your gaze down. You learn to smile on command, to bleed in silence, to accept. Your education, if you receive any, consists of memorizing the Lord's Prayer, learning to count to 20 using beans, and being told to fear everything: the dark, strangers, wolves, God, men, your own reflection. You don't go to school unless you're rich or male or destined for a monastery. You don't learn to read. You barely learn to write your own name. But you learn to keep the fire going, to spot a bad egg by smell, and to skin a rabbit without crying. That's enough. There is no privacy. You sleep in a pile with your siblings, your cousins, maybe the goat. You share blankets, infections, bedwetting, and nightmares. You hear things at night you shouldn't, groans, cries, secrets. You learn to pretend to sleep. You learn what violence sounds like through walls made of straw. You learn that hunger is normal, that pain means you're growing, that crying is for children, which, ironically, you're not. You watch people die, constantly. The old woman across the road, the baby who coughed too much, the boy who fell from the tree and didn't wake up, the girl whose belly swelled and then burst. Death is not shocking. It is scheduled. You step over it. You help dig the hole. You remember it for a week, then forget. You're already too busy. The closest thing to play is mock labor. You chase chickens. You throw stones. You pretend your stick is a scythe or a sword or a cross. You giggle sometimes. Then you cough. Then someone yells for you to get back to work. You do. Your body doesn't belong to you. If you're sold, it's for a contract of apprenticeship, a 7-year sentence to serve another man for the promise of learning a trade and possibly keeping your life. If you're married, it's arranged before your first bleeding. If you're beaten, it's discipline. If you complain, you're spoiled. If you're obedient, you disappear. There are no birthday parties, no gifts, no nups, no questions, only rules, only expectations, only survival. By the time you're 10, you've likely buried a sibling. By 12, you've seen a man hanged. By 14, you've worked more days than a modern adult. By 16, you're either married, pregnant, in service, maimed, or dead. You don't grow into adulthood. You're shoved into it face first with a prayer and a slap. And the worst part? You think it's normal. Because it is. Because it always has been. One day it just happens. Not with drama. Not with angels or trumpets. Just quietly, dully. The The same way the roof sags in after too many winters, or how the last onion in the cellar grows soft and collapses under its own weight. You wake up, or maybe you don't. Your cough is heavier than usual. The ache in your back sharper. Your piss smells like a compost pile. Your eyes won't focus. The heat in your body is wrong. Not fever hot, but dying cold warm like something that's trying to go out. No one panics. No one screams. Death is not an event. It's a process. You've seen it dozens of times. Children with hollow cheeks. Neighbors who stopped standing. Your cousin who went to bed shivering and woke up stiff. It's everywhere. It's always been. In the fields, in the beds, in the bread, in the water. You've been preparing for this since your first breath. You just hoped it wouldn't be this week. The family gathers. Not in sorrow, but in readiness. You're covered with an extra blanket. You're given water you can't swallow and food you can't chew. You're too weak to speak. The priest is sent for. Not the doctor. His job is over. Now comes the man with the incense, the cross, and the increasingly strained optimism. You confess everything, even the sins you didn't commit, just in case. You're afraid. Of course you are, because the afterlife isn't comfort. It's unknown. The church taught you what to expect. Fire, wailing, gnashing teeth, the long lines of judgment. You picture St. Peter with a ledger and God with a stick. You try to remember if you stole that coin from the market. You did. You hope that indulgence from 5 years ago still counts. You forget if you ever forgave your brother. You pray God did. You start adrift. Not sleep. Not unconsciousness. Just drifting. A lightness. You see the room differently. You feel the air move in slow motion. You feel your body soften. Not relax. Collapse. You stop being solid. You become something else. And then you stop. Breathing, blowing, hurting. And for the first time in your life, no one tells you to get up. What happens next depends on your status. If you're poor, which of course you are, your body is washed with cold water and rags that have already been used 3 times today. You're wrapped in the same blanket you died under, carried by your sons or cousins or some unlucky apprentice, and lowered into the ground without much ceremony. There's no coffin. Just a pit. Maybe a cross. Maybe not. If you're lucky, someone says a prayer. If you're unlucky, it rains. The grave floods. Your body floats. Someone steps on your face while digging the next hole. They pretend they didn't notice. If you're suspected of anything, a sin, a debt, a rumor of witchcraft, your burial is denied. You're dumped outside consecrated ground, near the trees. The birds pick at your eyes. No one visits. No one remembers. If you're rich, you get a tomb, a stone, a record. But you're still dead. And eventually, even the stone fades. You're gone, but your space remains. Your family has one less mouth to feed, one less blanket to share. They feel grief, of course, in the quiet moments, in the space where your breath used to be. But mostly, they feel relief, because you've been released from cold, from pain, from taxes, from obligations, from lice, from the endless cycle of hunger and humiliation. Death here is not an ending. It's a promotion. Your soul, wherever it went, might be burning, might be floating, might be nothing. But your body, it's free. No more plows, no more priests. No more spoiled beer and scabbed feet and piss-soaked straw. Just earth. Just sleep. Just quiet. And when your grandchildren speak of you, if they do, they won't say much. Just this. He lasted longer than most. And that, in this world, is a miracle.